So new reports have surfaced that the Browns actually are trying to sign Jadeveon Clowney, to my surprise. And it sounds like the Browns were apparently close. There's not a lot of details on why they're not signing with each other yet, or why the Browns and Clowney have not come to an agreement yet. I have my own theory that I'll share at the end of this video, but a lot of the conversation about Jadeveon Clowney and the Browns is, should the Browns sign Jadeveon Clowney? Yes. Yes, they should. It's a no-brainer. But before I get to why I think it's a no-brainer, I do have to address that there is a dissenting opinion about Jadeveon Clowney, that there are people who don't think the Browns should sign Jadeveon Clowney. And there's one article I saw, it was featured on Bleacher Report. It's from Browns Wire, written by Jeff Risdon, that is kind of sums up the argument against Jadeveon Clowney that I've seen on social media. His argument is that Jadeveon Clowney would be a marginal, if at all, upgrade from Olivier Vernon, and that he wouldn't be worth more money than Olivier Vernon. And he has, I guess, some merit to that argument if you just look at the sack numbers in certain pass rushing stats. So, for example, he has Olivier Vernon, who has 3.5 sacks. He rounded up to 4 in his article. That makes no sense. You don't round up sacks because it's possible for somebody to get awarded half a sack. But 3.5 sacks to Jadeveon Clowney's 3. And then PFF has a pass rushing grade for Clowney that is 76.7 compared to Olivier Vernon, 75.7. So comparable numbers in those two areas, right? Sacks and pass rushing grade. But where I think the arguments against Clowney, and where in specifically this article, the argument loses ground, is when you take a deeper look at the numbers and why those numbers are that. And then also when you acknowledge that Jadeveon Clowney is not just a pass rusher, he's a defensive lineman who is very significant in another part of the game. Now, one big misstep in this article is that he inaccurately has Jadeveon Clowney's PFF, his total PFF grade at 80.8, which would, in his article, say he's only 0.4 percentage of a grade better than Olivier Vernon, when in reality, Jadeveon Clowney's PFF grade was actually 87.3, which is actually 1 percentage point higher than Myles Garrett's in the same year. So again, when it comes to his argument and basing it off the PFF score, it's just sloppy and completely inaccurate. But also just measuring a defensive lineman off of one aspect of the game is kind of incomplete. So the sack number is the sack number, and that's not impressive. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the three sacks are impressive. They're not. But if you look at the production that surrounds that sack number, that makes up that sack number, you're going to see the gap between him and a guy like Olivier Vernon. If you look at quarterback knockdowns, Olivier Vernon 5, Jadeveon Clowney 10. Quarterback hurries, Olivier Vernon 8, Jadeveon Clowney 17. Pressures, Olivier Vernon 17, Jadeveon Clowney 30. And then sacks, obviously 3.5 to 3. So the full story tends to paint a clearer image, right? You can see where Clowney's production is. You can see where he affects the pass game, where Olivier Vernon doesn't. So there is a significant difference between Olivier Vernon and Jadeveon Clowney, even as a pass rusher. Now, if we talk about stopping the run, it's not even comparable, and it's not even worth comparing, because Vernon's not on the same level as a guy like Clowney. Myles Garrett is on the same level in the run-stopping department from last year as Clowney, but Olivier Vernon's nowhere close, because I don't think people understand this. People say it all the time, but they don't talk about Jadeveon Clowney with that understanding. Because everybody looks at the sack numbers. And I know I said last year that Jadeveon Clowney is overrated. That's when you compare him to Aaron Donald or DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not as good as them. But if you're comparing him to Olivier Vernon, he's clearly better than him. And he's clearly one of the best in the NFL at stopping the run, because look at the impact he has. And if you don't think the impact of a Jadeveon Clowney is going to be felt in the run game, just look at Myles Garrett. When Myles Garrett got suspended, what part of the Browns defense suffered the most? The run game. The run game went from bad to flat out unbearably awful without Myles Garrett. They gave up 11 of their 19 rushing touchdowns, or 57% of all their rushing touchdowns happened in the last 6 weeks without Myles Garrett. On average, the Browns went from giving up 127 yards with 1 touchdown with Myles Garrett per game to 173.8 with 2 touchdowns without Myles Garrett. It's significant what a very good defensive end can do for the run game from that position. Don't believe me? Just look what Jadeveon Clowney did for the Seattle Seahawks run game, and look what they look like without him and with him. It's significant. So the Seattle Seahawks had Jadeveon Clowney for about 12 games healthy. And in those 12 games, the Seahawks gave up only 99 yards a game with 1 touchdown. Without Clowney, they gave up 2 touchdowns a game and 172 yards. That's a 73-yard difference from losing 1 player. Jadeveon Clowney is that player. Don't believe me? Here's some deeper stats to look into within that. The average touchdown run when Jadeveon Clowney was on the field for the Seahawks, 6 yards. The average touchdown run without Jadeveon Clowney on the field, 38 yards. So not only are they giving up more rushing touchdowns, they're also giving up more big plays from the ground game. They're giving up longer runs. They're giving up longer home run runs. It's bad. Now look at similar opponents, because maybe they played a differently stacked schedule. All right, when they had Clowney, they played Arizona, LA, and the 49ers. And then when they didn't have Clowney, they also played LA, Arizona, and the 49ers, the division opponents. It just so happens that they played each of these games with Clowney and each of these games without Clowney. In the games with Clowney against LA, they gave up 82 yards. Without Clowney, they gave up 162 yards. Against Arizona, they gave up 115 yards when they had Clowney. Without Clowney, 253. Against the 49ers, the Super Bowl, the NFC champions 49ers, 87 yards when Clowney's on the field. 87. The Browns gave up like 200-something with Myles Garrett against the 49ers. Without Clowney, they gave up 128. Significant jumps. What this team did with Clowney on the field and what they did from a run defending standpoint. And this is where I'm going to beat the table for Jadeveon Clowney. What's the biggest issue that I've been screaming about all offseason that I think the Browns desperately need to improve? It's their run defense. Their run defense was awful last year, and they play in a division where you're going to have to stop the run. Joe Mixon ain't going nowhere. The Pittsburgh Steelers, you have to assume until they can't. And they kind of did it last year, 30th ranked run game. But you have to assume until they're dead in the water that they can't run the ball. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens, who are by far the best run team in the NFL. By far. It's not even close. It wasn't even close last year. I don't anticipate it being close next year. They're going to be able to run the ball at an extremely high level. So if you're the Browns and you want to lock this division up and you want to have a good in-division record, you have to be able to stop the run, because you're not going to beat the teams in your division, even Cincinnati. And it showed last year. They lost to Cincinnati when they couldn't stop the run. You're not going to beat these teams without being able to stop the run. It's not going to matter how good your offense is. If the other team can bleed you on the ground, you're not going to win many games. The Browns need to stop the run. They're incredibly soft in that area. Even with Myles Garrett, they gave up over 120 yards per game. So just having Myles Garrett back ain't going to solve the problem completely. You need to add another piece, preferably 2. We all know, if you watch this channel routinely, I want the Browns to draft somebody big inside like a Derek Brown. But if you can add a Jadeveon Clowney, now we're talking about something big going on in the stopping the run department. He is a perfect fit opposite of Myles Garrett. He provides a service and a specific skill set that the Browns are going to desperately need this year. So yes, he is worth more money than Olivier Vernon, because Olivier Vernon did nothing to stop the run. It's why I said that Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey, well, more so Joe Schobert, wasn't worth the money that he was going to sign for, because $10 million for a guy who has showed you he's not going to make a difference against the run is not going to help you when the Browns need players to stop the run. That's what they need to be able to do. They can't do it right now with their current roster as it's set up. Even with Myles Garrett, they're not good enough at it. You sign a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, maybe draft a guy like Derrick Brown in the first round. Now you got a very stout run defense. Now you got something that might slow down Baltimore, might grind Pittsburgh to a complete stop on offense because they don't have any other way to move the ball, and really allow you to tee off on a young quarterback like Joe Schobert. It is a brilliant in-division move. Now, do I think it'll happen? No, I don't think it's going to happen. One, because when reports leak out like this that a team was close to signing somebody, I usually never hear that player that was close to signing that with that team signed with that team that he was close to signing with. It seems like the negotiations are probably done. Now, I know they said everything's open, but that's just how things tend to go in the NFL. And if you have to look at this through Jadeveon Clowney's perspective, he just played a full year on the franchise tag. He is only getting older. He has a history of knee injuries. He probably doesn't want to sign a short-term deal. And that's the only type of contract that the Browns are going to sign him with. Now, I've seen people suggest, well, why not get Clowney on a short-term deal? I promise you the Browns are trying to do that, and they're trying to give him all kinds of money to do that because they don't want to have Clowney interfere with their ability to re-sign Myles Garrett, because that's just going to be something that's going to work into free agency from now on until those players are re-signed. I promise you, they're trying to sign Jadeveon Clowney on a short-term deal, but if you're Jadeveon Clowney and you can get 4 or 5 years guaranteed rather than the 2-3 that the Browns are going to offer you, you probably want to take that security because you're getting older. You don't know how valuable you're going to be in your 30s with the knee injuries that you had. I don't blame Clowney with his injury history and everything else going on with his body, with him, trying to avoid a short-term contract. And I think that ultimately is going to be what keeps the Browns from signing him, because I don't think the Browns are going to move on a short-term deal, and I don't see Clowney moving on that either. Now, that can change. The Seahawks can refuse to give him a long-term deal. I don't see why they would do that, but it's possible. It's feasible. And the Browns could sign him, and I would be a very, very happy boy. But I just don't see it happening. But if the Browns can get him on a short-term deal and it is about money, they should do whatever it takes to make it happen, because Jadeveon Clowney is going to take this defense from a run-stopping perspective to the level that it needs to be at to be able to stay afloat in this division, because last year they just weren't good enough against the run. Even with Myles Garrett, without him, they were a complete disaster. So they need to add a little extra juice. And I'm sorry, I don't believe Olivier Vernon in year 2 as a Cleveland Brown is going to add that juice. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think Olivier Vernon is the same thing as Jadeveon Clowney? Or do you think that Jadeveon Clowney is going to add an extra dimension to the Browns defense that has not been there in years? Let me know in the comment section down below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ding that notification bell so you get notified when I upload. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.